Welcome back to the Mormon News Roundup. I'm your humble host, D-Base. That's talent on loan from Kolob. It's June 15th, 2025. It's episode 166. I'm coming to you from Washington, D.C., where the truth runs free, the crossroads of the East. Yes, I am talent on loan from Kolob, and I am the king of the Sons of Provo, not to mention the diddly whack Mac Mormon Daddy. Let's see what's on your agenda, and thanks so much for joining us today. We're going to talk about Mormon Church tax evasion. This was a thunderbolt that was launched from the Widow's Mite report. Why is the Mormon Church underreporting millions of dollars to the IRS? That is our featured news article. We will bring that to you today. We will close with that article. We will also give you some LDS temple updates. There's a lot of lawsuits, a lot of hard feelings, and a lot of consternation across this nation with regards to the giant Masonic esoteric castles that are being rammed down small communities. We'll also talk about Latter-day Saints versus Gay Pride Month and some surprising Pew Research LDS poll results. Let's kick things off here with residents of Wyoming. A small Wyoming city have lost their grassroots challenge to plans for a biggish building in their community. The High Court in Wyoming has given the LDS Church the official green light on the 101-foot tall temple. Now, as you may recall, the church went ahead and started building this temple, which is currently under construction in the small town of Cody, Wyoming, even without Wyoming's Supreme Court's official go-ahead. That's how confident that they were that this was going to be approved. And for me, it was absolutely no surprise that they went ahead and got the official approval here, which has just happened this week. The Wyoming Supreme Court has rejected appeals filed by a grassroots group challenging plans to build a Latter-day Saint temple in Cody. Justices ruled just a couple of days ago that a lower court was correct to reject a lawsuit brought by the Preserve Our Cody Neighborhoods group, effectively ending the challenge and clearing that construction hurdle for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Returning to my commentary here, well, yeah, there was a minor hurdle here, but the church did not care. They went ahead and started the building process here just a couple of months ago. Returning to the article, the residents had sought to overturn the city's zoning appeal of plans from the Utah-based church to build the 10,000 square foot temple and towering steeple on a 5-acre parcel on Skyline Drive. Yes, this is the end of a saga. But you know who has the most amount of regrets about this was the actual city planner here, technically the city administrator here. Mr. Cook here now has released a statement here saying that he was contrite over the complete LDS process. He was proud of his life's work. However, he was disappointed with his actions with regards to this entire saga. He says that he wishes that he had handled the permitting of the LDS temple differently. He said, I was in the realm of the planning and zoning board, but applying for a variance, knowing the former city planner processing that variance and running it through the system was a Mormon by his religion. He said that he didn't do what was right, and he felt that he betrayed his constituents in the fact that he really didn't do his job when it came to all of this. He's retired now, and I think that I'd like to see a little bit of the fact that he's come to grips with the fact that he did not represent his community very well. He said he wasn't neutral and that he regretted, he's disappointed, and he split the community, and it still lingers out there. Rebecca Biblioteca gives a reaction to this retiring Cody city administrator who expressed regret that he didn't see a conflict of interest with the LDS city planner, who in hindsight was very biased and not neutral as he guided the Cody Planning and Zoning Board through the LDS temple application process. This is the end of
So a city administrator is retiring in Cody, Wyoming. You've probably been following over the last couple years the fight of the residents against the LDS Church building a temple that breaks all their zoning and their codes. Now, when asked, this administrator says, yeah, I have regrets about the LDS city planner who, in the administrator's mind and a lot of our minds, was working very hard behind the scenes for the LDS Church's interests and not the interests of the city of Cody as he guided the Planning and Zoning Board through the entire process. I think it's impossible for just a regular person to recognize what it means to take that oath in the temple, that you will consecrate everything to the building of the kingdom of God and support the LDS Church church, even when you're in city government. So this article is interesting because this gentleman is finally realizing at the end that there was a conflict. He was very biased, and the administrator should have recused.
Yes, indeed. And this is why we need separation of church and state in our government. And I'm very much an advocate of that particular position here. Yes, the city administrator has now realized what most of us realized from the beginning is that when a lot of times when you get Latter-day Saints in these high positions of power, they preference the church over their oath of office. A perfect example of that would be Senator Gordon Smith. You can find a number of videos on this channel that talk about how he betrayed his constituents in a number of diabolical ways. And I do not use that term lightly, but yes, this is rather unfortunate, as many of these temples are. This Cody city is not going to have a Masonic temple throughout the generations, lighting up the sky and desecrating this small community. In my opinion, it is highly unfortunate. And it's too bad that this city administrator didn't realize that the city planner was a stooge for the Mormon Church earlier. Highly disappointing. Speaking of temples here, there are 3 new temples that are being announced in Arizona. The church is announcing approximately 30 to 40 temples every single year. This is a typical example of what would happen in those communities here. Some people welcome them, some people do not.
Over the last year, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints announced that it would be building 3 new temples in Arizona. They're considered the holiest of places in the faith, and they're always prominent. They're built with high-end materials and well-maintained.
This is the Mesa, Arizona temple for those of you who are listening in podcast land.
To give you an idea of how popular and well-visited they can be, when the Mesa Temple had an open house after a very extensive remodel, close to 350,000 people showed up.
Right, and this temple also does not have a spire. I just want to add, even though the church has argued that the temples and their steeples are an intricate part of worship, this one doesn't even have one.
So with the recent announcement that Flagstaff would be the home to the newest temple, there was a lot of excitement.
Flagstaff, Arizona.
It was a surprise announcement this spring. Flagstaff would be the next city in Arizona to see a Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints temple built. In the last 13 months, 2 other temples have been announced for Yuma and Queen Creek.
Temples are, to us, the house of God.
Candace Koppel is the church's Arizona communication director.
They're our most holy place that we can come and worship. They're the place where we can come and feel peace. They're a place where we can come and just have the highest expressions of our faith sacraments here.
The religious...
Just real quick to jump in here, it's always interesting to note that Mormon church leaders never really do any interviews whatsoever of any substance. And that's why they, instead of sending someone out here who is a senior Mormon church leader, instead we usually just get PR stooges.
Religious practices that happen in the temple are considered sacred ordinances. They include things like marriages and baptism for ancestors. Arizona's first temple, built in Mesa, was dedicated in 1927. Another temple wasn't built in the state for 75 years until the Snowflake Temple opened in 2002. The church says picking what city will get a temple is primarily based on 2 things. 1, the member population in the area.
What? The member population in the area? Are you absolutely out of your mind? In Cody, Wyoming, there is not a substantial number of Latter-day Saints in that community whatsoever. In fact, we've seen, like, for instance, in the Las Vegas temple, the second Las Vegas temple was announced, and Las Vegas does not have a large population of Latter-day Saints. There are some temples that are being put into places that have very, very few Mormons.
Is there a large enough number of members who would worship at the temple? Second, accessibility.
You know, there's some communities such as Yuma that may not, ever get to the size of a Gilbert or a Mesa, but maybe that distance to drive to Gilbert or Mesa to go to the temple is difficult for the members to be able to worship as often as they would like.
Right now, the closest temple to Flagstaff is in Phoenix, about 175 miles from downtown Flagstaff.
I'm just going to respond real quick also to what this PR stooge said about the proximity to temples. That argument, as I've already mentioned, also fails. Las Vegas already has 1 temple in it. Now it has another temple that's just a few miles away. That doesn't add up. There's 31 temples in Utah. In fact, there's some within just a few miles of one another. That also doesn't add up. If you take a look at the Fairview temple, which we're going to talk about here in a moment, in Dallas, outside of Dallas, it's only a half an hour from another temple. So it doesn't, the rationale that she brings forward, that the idea that, well, there's lots of members in these areas where new temples are being constructed, that's not true. And if you look at the proximity, that is also not true. There doesn't seem to be any rationale, rhyme, or reason to the church's push for over 400 unannounced temples. And I wish that a senior Mormon church leader would actually answer the tough questions rather than PR spokespersons.
I think another community aspect is the university. With NAU, students not having to travel home to take part in this temple, being able to have folks that maybe come to Flagstaff, to Northern Arizona University from other places, having a temple here would be great for them as well.
Although the church has not announced where the 3 new temples will be built, there's a lot of speculation on where, when, and the impact on the immediate community.
I mean, when a temple's announced, it's interesting. Sometimes you do see the property values around a temple go up because people want to be close to something that's so beautiful. They see the value in having a temple in their community. That's
okay. This is supposed to be the benefit to the community, is that they have to pay more money in property taxes. This is your supposed benefit of this. See, at least when you build a Catholic church or a Salvation Army church, at least people can generally go into those churches or places for meditation or for worship. Generally, people cannot go into the LDS churches, LDS temples. I see them as almost no value add whatsoever to the community as a whole, which is why a lot of people do not welcome them.
certainly not one of our considerations. It's just something that, you occasionally see happen.
We checked with the town of Gilbert, home to the most recent Arizona temple, and it doesn't track the direct economic impact. But the church is confident all 3 will be well visited by members and non-members alike.
Right. There's been a couple of studies like by Dallin Overstreet, for instance, who took a look at the economic impact of the temples in communities, and that they have virtually no benefit whatsoever to helping people out of poverty, to helping anyone. These temples are generally only used to perform Masonic esoteric rituals for people like Holocaust victims, Vlad the Impaler, and let's not forget Adolf Schmittler. They are a massive waste of time and treasure.
I think there's always a general curiosity about temples. I know when I went to Rome, I was very excited to see the Vatican and just interested in it from a lot of different aspects, both from the religious side as well as the historical side. And I think that there's that similar curiosity when a temple's announced.
It's interesting that she mentions the Rome, Italy temple when, once again, we have very few members in Rome, and Rome is the ultimate tourist destination. A lot of these temples are just for wealthy members like this woman to go and check them off of her bucket list, and they're for temple tourism only. They're only often open a couple of days a week, and it's just a giant tube to nothingness.
And just a note for you, temples are not open to the general public. They are only open to members in good standing with the church. They're also different from chapels that you see frequently in your community, which are open to anyone.
Exactly. Good article here. I really enjoyed that from K12 News over there in Arizona. And by the way, if you can hit the like, if you can hit the subscription, I'd be very grateful for that. Next article here, Fairview residents escalate fight against sprawling LDS temple with a new lawsuit. They have been teasing this for some time. They have signaled before with their lawyers that they were going to file the suit, and indeed they did just a couple of days ago here. And this story is pretty big here across the Dallas area. In April, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints celebrated after the Fairview Town Council approved a permit to allow local religious leaders to build a 30,000 square foot temple with a 120 foot tall spire. But now a group of residents has followed through on their threats to legally challenge the council's vote to build the massive temple in the Dallas-Fort Worth metro. And you can see how many different news articles there are. This is a hot items out there, and they have escalated the fight here. They're looking for an answer. I think we all are. In order to put this behind us, we all want that answer, and that's according to the lawyer that they have secured. And the basis for this lawsuit was the fact that the town council only approved this particular permit on a 5-2 vote, when in actuality the lawsuit is arguing that it should have been approved on at least a 6-1 vote based on some local zoning laws. And you can go back to last week's episode and learn a little bit more about that. Another temple update. Temples are big in Mormonism, folks, here. On Monday, June 2nd, just not that long ago, Judge Jennifer Mabee listened to arguments from the attorneys of all three parties involved in a lawsuit against Wasatch County over its approval of the Heber Valley, Utah temple plans in November 2023. Just my own comments. This was a temple whose groundbreaking was by President Nelson himself. Back to the article, residents argue it was wrong for the council to use a legislative development agreement to approve the temple plans, but the residents' standing or right to sue has also been questioned since they live on land under city jurisdiction, not county jurisdiction. The judge will consider all sides and issue a ruling in the coming weeks. This is a picture here of the Heber Valley Temple progress on the Facebook page here. They have broken the ground, but they have not started construction here. And there's going to be a lot of lawsuits associated with this one. In fact, there's probably going to be millions of dollars spent on all of these lawsuits in order to jam through these particular temples. This is another case here in Heber Valley where the city council is made up of mostly Latter-day Saint persons, and they may have, once again, have that conflict of interest by approving this temple when so many residents do not want it to go through. As we're seeing here, this has been long in the works here. This has been years in the making of getting this judge involved here, listening to the arguments against Wasatch County for approving this. Just another example of Mormon Incorporated and its temple building strategies here. I do have an article that goes along with this as well here.
Suing the county for a proposed temple of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Neighbors accuse the county of approving the temple plans, even though it doesn't follow zoning laws.
Right.
The temple will be just outside of Heber City. One of the big talkers here is the temple's size, about 210 feet tall. But court documents say the zoning rules only allow a height of 35 feet.
Right.
That's exactly what we have here. Special privileges were attached to this one piece of property through the legislative development agreement, which is improper. All that applies to is if the building is in a proposed business, commercial, or industrial zone that abuts a residential zone, then you get that additional height over the 20 feet. That's not applicable here.
Now, the county argues that it's done nothing wrong. They say they didn't change zoning laws for the temple, and they took the proper steps.
In this zone, it is appropriate to look at the standards of the code that allow for a non-residential use adjacent to a residential zone and determining what a conditional use would allow. And this project clearly meets those criteria.
Now, the hearing wrapped up a little bit ago around 5 o'clock this evening. The judge says that she's still reviewing everything before making a final ruling. We'll let you know, though, when she does.
Yep, a perfect example of Mormon Incorporated getting in the mix there in Heber. See, the church tried to get around the fact that the temple did not conform to the zoning by using a legislative development agreement. Some people might call that like a conditional use agreement, but the residents of the residents are suing the county and saying, you know what, you can't just carve out an exception here. It doesn't make any sense. That's the entire genesis of the lawsuit here. A couple of other articles here, folks, just real quick. Man found dead at LDS Church Youth Camp in northern Utah. This was published on June 7th, a couple of days ago here in Midway, Utah. Speaking of Heber Valley and Wasatch County, a 38-year-old youth leader was found dead in a trailer at the Chalet Campground in Wasatch Mountain State Park on Thursday. He had slept in an enclosed trailer Wednesday evening and was found dead by other leaders the next morning, said Wasatch County Undersheriff Josh Probst. The man had lit some charcoal in a Dutch oven and it was burning inside the trailer as a heat source, Probst said, adding that investigators suspect carbon monoxide poisoning. He said an autopsy will determine the official cause of death. He was participating in a youth camp for the Mormon Church. That is a highly unfortunate situation and certainly very sad. My heart goes out to his family. A couple of other big news articles that came across my desk this week. Mormon Madoff's wife went from riches to rags after he confessed to running a $20 million Ponzi scheme. This is an exclusive from People magazine, published just a couple of days ago. There's the Mormon Madoff on the right, and his wife, Andrea Merriman, then husband, turned himself into federal agents in 2009 for running a $20 million Ponzi scheme. Merriman and her family had to rebuild their lives and recover from financial hardship. Now, Andrea is sharing her story on TikTok, where she's gaining millions of views on her story time videos of her life. If you go over and check her out, she doesn't have a lot of followers yet, but she definitely does have some interesting tales here. The Mormon Madoff. Wow. Ex-wife. I went from glamorous to ground zero overnight. She's rebuilt her life. She's a speaker. She's a coach. Very interesting stuff. I'm definitely going to need to check out her channel. Other news, folks. Nate Easton, one of my favorite reporters out there, has brought us the chilling details of Lori Vallow Daybell. She has been found guilty once again. So we have a verdict that's reached when she unalived JJ Vallow. She unalived her daughter, Tylee Ryan. She also was found guilty of conspiracy to commit unaliving of Tammy Daybell, also of Charles Vallow, and conspiracy to commit murder of Brandon Bordeaux. My goodness, the Doomsday Mom, what a psychopath. But yep, she's lost it all here. Here's a brief summary here of this diabolical ex-Mormon.
Breaking news right now in Lori Vallow Daybell's third criminal trial. A Maricopa County jury has found Vallow Daybell guilty of conspiring to commit murder. In this case, she was accused of conspiring with her brother, Alex Cox, to kill her niece's ex-husband, Brandon Boudreaux. Let's listen to the verdict being read.
We, the jury, duly impaneled and sworn in the above entitled action upon our oaths, do find the defendant, Lori Daybell, as to the crime of count 1, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder occurring on or about October 2nd, 2019, as follows. Guilty.
Again, you just heard guilty right now. Erica Stapleton is joining us. She was in the courtroom when that verdict was being read. Erica, what happened?
Tram, yeah, that moment came really quickly. The jury just got the case yesterday afternoon and went home soon after. It's believed they deliberated for less than 30 minutes here, coming back again with that guilty verdict. Of course, this is what the state wanted. This is what everyone's wanted over the past 5+ years. Lori Vallow Daybell, of course, has a long backstory here. She's been convicted in Idaho of killing her children, Tylee and JJ, and conspiring to kill her current husband's first wife. She was also convicted in Arizona back in April of conspiring to kill her former husband. Now, this case is a little different because Brandon Boudreaux, the victim in this case, where she's now been convicted, he actually survived a shooting attempt back in October 2019. So he testified, he took the stand in this case, and just a few moments ago, he gave some remarks to us outside. He was standing next to his current wife. He was staying next to Kay Woodcock, who is JJ Vallow's grandmother. That's, again, Lori's deceased child. And Colby Ryan, Lori's adult son, who said his life has really been upended by all of this, watching his mom essentially take away everyone in his life, leaving him sisterless, brotherless, fatherless, and essentially motherless, because she's been sentenced to life in prison in Idaho. So we did hear from Mr. Boudreaux just a few moments ago. They were all standing together. He said they're a united front, and he's, happy with the outcome today. He said he didn't like sitting in court, listening to this and being impacted by this. Vallow Daybell, in this case, who represented herself, actually had the opportunity to cross-examine him. He said he really didn't like that, but he did it for the other victims in these prior cases. So truly an emotional moment. And going back to the moment that that verdict was read, Vallow Daybell herself was sitting in her chair at the defendant's table, kind of slumped back, really no emotion from her. And that's essentially what we saw the last time she was convicted in Arizona, Tram, just a few weeks ago at this point. So truly a wild story here, but the closing of another chapter, and where we go from here. She'll be sentenced in these 2 Arizona cases. That's expected to take place in July. And from there, she's going to be extradited back to Idaho, where she will spend the rest of her life in prison. Tram?
All right, Erica, thank you. And of course, we're going to have more and then another 12 News update in about 40 minutes, as well as more coverage at 1 o'clock, as well as all the evening newscasts at 4, 5, and 6.
Yep, Lori Daybell got the justice. It looks like justice was served in this case. I, for one, definitely welcome this particular verdict, even though she had already been convicted of a number of atrocities. You always want to make sure that none of those would ever be overturned for, I don't know, prosecutorial misconduct or a juror or some kind of an administrative issue. We definitely don't want to see Lori Vallow breathing the fresh air. Glad to see this particular verdict, and this trial was incredible. dumpster fire. My hat is off to the judge there. He did a fantastic job. Big fan of this judge out there. And you can get updates on these type of things, by the way, if you follow the Mormon News Roundup. We're on Instagram, we're on TikTok, we are on X. We can get weekly or even daily updates on these particular news articles if you follow us over there on social media. Couple of other big stories that I saw here is the ICE raids and I'm sure that some of you are familiar here, at least in the United States, with what is happening in Los Angeles. Also, the protests, the ICE rally, the people are protesting against the ICE immigration customs enforcement here. And I got a couple of takes on that have to do with Mormonism, because the thoughtful faith out there, the Jacob Hansen, who simply will not debate me, by the way, even though he challenged me to a debate here, he's talking about how the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is participating in the Los Angeles ICE protests. That's unbelievable. I couldn't believe when I heard that. Let's see what Jacob's got going on.
Politically neutral? I always thought so. But apparently my friend Jackson Washburn, in his official capacity as a stake interfaith representative, participated in a protest march against ICE in LA, and apparently he did it with the blessing of his stake president in the Los Angeles area. Does this look like political neutrality to you? Let me know what you think in the comments.
I actually
is the church
I actually like what Jacob has said here. That's very, very interesting stuff here. And here's a quick reaction here. That doesn't look like political neutrality to me. A high-ranking LDS authority attends a public rally, reportedly with a stake president's blessing, and suddenly neutrality is under fire. The mental gymnastics required to interpret that as betrayal reveal more about the gatekeeping than the church. This is classic cognitive bias, selectively outraged, allergic to nuance, and addicted to confirmation. If your worldview can't accommodate complexity without lashing out, it's not conviction, it's control. When a church leader exercises conscience and your first instinct is to imply betrayal, that's not discernment. That's dogma disguised as devotion. The gatekeeping here isn't about truth. It's about tribal loyalty enforced by emotional reflex. Well, I would just disagree with that particular Twitter take. I'm actually, for once, in agreement with Jacob. That doesn't look like political neutrality to me. However, I don't believe that people should be politically neutral. People should take sides in these particular conflicts. And I'm in favor of, showing your ability, in the Bill of Rights we have enshrined in the Constitution, the ability to peacefully assemble together, even though some of those protesters in Los Angeles have not done so. But I think that the individuals who are associated with this particular tweet were peacefully assembled, and I appreciate the ability to redress my government and to assemble peacefully. And I don't think that the church should be neutral. So for once in my life, I'm in agreement with Jacob. Doesn't look like political neutrality. The only difference is I have absolutely no problem in taking sides in conflicts. Now, this is a new LDS trend out here. This was released not that long ago here. One of my favorite TikTok accounts out there from President Please Help Me. By the way, this is Rob Tobler, and I have a 4-hour-long episode on President Please Help Me on the Mormon News Roundup here, but he's talking here about a new study that was just released not that long ago from Pew Research that talks about the decline of Christianity in the United States of America. And here he's summarizing a 300-page report here. Daily prayer is down. Daily prayer among Latter-day Saints is down. It dropped from 2007 all the way up until now in 2024 down to 73%. Mormons do not pray as much as they once did. Also, Latter-day Saints are less certain about God. Not only are Americans overall becoming less certain that God exists, but Latter-day Saints themselves went from 90% believing that God exists in 2007 down to 76%. They are less certain about that. Then also, LDS leads in denying global warming. When you compare Latter-day Saints to Protestants, evangelicals, mainline Christianity, Catholics, Orthodox Christians, even among Jews, Muslims, Buddhists, and Hindu, Latter-day Saints have a very dim view of global warming. In 2008, 29% said that the earth is getting warmer because of human activity. That percentage has dropped to 21%. They deny global warming. Also, white men are leading in Mormonism. That should be no surprise here. Among virtually all religious denominations here, of white men leading the way. Also in Mormonism, support for women in the workplace is up. Back in 2014, it was the support for women having an increased presence in the paid labor market was 49%, but that has increased to 61%. It's still trailing most other religious denominations. We've also seen a support for same-sex marriage, which has come up. Still very, very low here, but in 2014, it was only 26% saying that they have support for same-sex marriage. Now in 2024, it's 41%. We're seeing a seismic shift, a definite change in socioeconomic in the psychology of Latter-day Saints and how they view the world. Very interesting stuff there from the Pew Research. Now, I have two more articles to take us out of here. Of course, June is Gay Pride Month here, but we've seen something very interesting here that was brought to my attention from Latter Gay Stories. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has quietly removed a 2015 statement from its official newsroom website, assuring its members that they are free to support LGBTQ events and groups, prompting questions and timings, as we've just seen Utah's largest Pride Festival just this last weekend. See, the original statement made by Todd Christofferson in an interview with the Church Public Affairs affirmed that members who supported same-sex marriage or participated in gay-friendly activities, such as marching in pride parades with groups like Mormons Building Bridges or engaging with organizations like Affirmation, would not risk their church membership or temple privileges. And this is what he said, quote, "We have individual members in the church with a variety of different opinions, beliefs, and positions on these issues and other issues," end quote. This statement offered hope for many gay members and allies, suggesting a space for diverse views within the faith. But now that link will bring you to a 404 page not found error. This removal sparks speculation about the church's intentions. Is this a deliberate shift in messaging or routine website maintenance that just happened to be scheduled for June? No explanation has been provided. An archived version of the article is accessible here. You can see it up here on the right here. But we apologize, the page that you are looking for is not found. So it used to be that you could go to these pride rallies, not have any problems with your church membership. That has been removed. That has left a lot of people very disappointed. I have a quick take here about that from our favorite temple buster, Rebecca Biblioteca.
So I'm going to the Salt Lake Pride Parade tomorrow with a group of friends, which makes what I'm about to talk about even more disheartening. I came across a post on Latter Gay Stories. Again, this was first posted on Latter Gay Stories. You can find them on Facebook. They have all kinds of excellent, excellent content. And they're just posing a question. This is now gone from the church's website. You know, of course, a lot of us, are kind of leery of this, thinking, does this mean something? Does this indicate a shift? A lot of us are planning on participating in things over the weekend, including faithful members with family members who may be in the LGBTQ community. So let me know what you think about a statement letting everyone know that it's okay to participate in this and you don't have to worry about your membership that now seems to be missing from the church's website. Let me know what you think.
Yeah, I definitely think that this is not just a website maintenance issue. For me, I definitely think it is a particular messaging that the church wants to make it less safe for a person to show their affirmation for the LGBTQ plus community. A couple of other articles out here. A new biography of Joseph Smith has hit from John G. Turner, The Rise and Fall of an American Prophet. You can go back and look at the Mormon News Roundup. I did have Dr. Turner on the program once upon a time here, but just some quick thoughts on this new biography, which is pretty big out there, from our favorite historian out there, Benjamin Park Official.
Joseph Smith, The Rise and Fall of an American Prophet, a new biography of Mormonism's founder that's out this month. The author of this new biography is John Turner, a non-Latter-day Saint studies scholar who has written a number of really important books on American religion in general, as well as several on Mormon history in particular, including the award-winning Brigham Young, Pioneer Prophet, a phenomenal biography of Mormonism's second prophet, as well as The Mormon Jesus, a biography. Now, you might be wondering, what's new in this biography, especially compared to previous biographies that I've discussed in previous videos, like Joseph Smith, Rough Stone Rolling by Richard Bushman, or No Man Knows My History by Fawn Brody. Well, Turner has an innovative argument that I'll detail, as well as some shortcomings that I'll also outline. The first major upside of this new biography is this is the first scholarly, comprehensive biography of Joseph Smith in the last 2 decades that's able to take advantage of both all the new primary sources that have been made available through the Joseph Smith Papers Project, as well as all the great scholarship that's come out in the last 2 decades that help us understand Joseph Smith and his context. Perhaps the best example of this is John Turner's treatment of polygamy. This is probably the best focused treatment of Joseph Smith's practice of and introduction of polygamy of all the biographies and books focused on that topic. It's probably the book that I will recommend to people if they just want to understand what Joseph Smith believed and practiced and the general chronology of polygamy in Nauvoo. John Turner is upfront with his belief that Joseph Smith did not have gold plates, was not visited by Jesus Christ, and was in some ways a pious fraud, a term that's been used by previous scholars. But moving beyond that, he presents Joseph Smith as an adventurer, as someone who loves risks, and at some points is able to verge on recklessness. And this framework actually introduced new concepts, or at least new understandings to me, even though I've read all the previous biographies. So I enjoyed the biography. I recommend it. In fact, I wrote one of the blurbs, pause if you want to read it, that the press used on the back spine. If you want more of my thoughts on this book in particular and Joseph Smith biographies in general, go over to my YouTube channel where I have a new video on that very topic. Let's talk about Joseph.
Very nice sum up there of John Turner's new book. He is definitely worth reading. And, John Turner has the unusual view here that there were no plates and that all of the experiences of the witnesses were merely visionary. He also has recently done a stint on Mormon stories as a non-Mormon scholar. He only lives just a few blocks from me, attends a Presbyterian church not far from my house. So if you're more interested in John Turner, I suggest that you go back to the Mormon News Roundup, watch the episode that I had him on. Very interesting stuff. Now, to our featured news article out there. This was a thunderbolt out there, folks. The LDS Church has supposedly, according to the Widow's Mite report, the Ensign Peak Advisors, which is the church's clandestine illegal hedge fund, by the way, the IRS and the SEC filings raise tax concerns. So this is a new 82-page document on the Widow's Mite report. Very interesting stuff here. And it's so complicated. I'm trying to summarize it for you. I read it a couple of times here. I'm definitely not a tax expert, but I've tried to do my best here. So the Widow's Mite report studied more than 30 publicly traded partnerships. Those are called PTP. That's a key term here. Those were investments that were held by Ensign Peak Advisors as disclosed in 2 distinct types of statutory reports. So Ensign Peak Advisors has had to file these particular reports now that the SEC has waded in and gave the church a cease and desist from its illegal shell company practices. And this started in about 2019 here. So these are the IRS forms 990 and also the SEC forms 13F. What the summary here, and this is a very long and complicated report. I'm trying to give you the report, the total summary here, that there has been a systemic understatement of taxable income here. Strong evidence that EPA routinely understated its taxable income from these publicly traded partnerships. And the Widow's Mite report says that they failed to report somewhere between 200 million and 450 million in cumulative taxable income from a period of 2003 through 2017. So basically, the Mormon Church has shortchanged the federal government somewhere between 40 and 90 million dollars. This is a big accusation. This is a thunderbolt here. And also, the Widow's Mite report has documented significant PTP investments in Ensign Peak that were previously perhaps not widely known. And one of the allegations also here, if I can summarize this, is a suspicious use of shell LLCs that were not only used to make it so that the federal government couldn't see the size of the portfolio, but also to underreport its P2P holdings. And finally, tax evasion may have occurred unless, and this is a big unless here, unless EPA made undisclosed payments to the IRS that were significantly higher than reported. So, I mean, there's always a possibility here that the Mormon Church sent extra checks to the Treasury Department, but I think we can all acknowledge that that is probably highly unlikely. This is the Q&A here that was on the Widows Might report here over on Reddit on R Mormon. This was the Q&A here, which this study says that they failed to report almost 200 million, 450 million in taxable income from those publicly traded partnerships. This is a newly discovered issue that has not been reported on previously, that has really nothing to do with the SEC violations. This is an entirely new topic. Now, of course, David Nielsen and Lars Nielsen, whistleblower, David is the whistleblower, but Lars Nielsen allegedly has already reported Ensign Peak for tax problems to the IRS. There's supposedly a probe that is open. There's no more available information to that, but this is still really, really big here. This was just not publicly known until this time here. So just so you're aware, a publicly traded partnership is where the interests of limited partners are traded on a securities exchange or a secondary market. They are managed by general partners and provide income that can be taxed at the investor level, offering a potential tax advantage compared to traditional corporations. PTPs are often used in industries like natural resources and real estate. So the church in Ensign Peak from that period of 2003 through 2017 had hundreds of millions of dollars associated with these PTPs, and you're supposed to pay taxes on that. And according to the 990 forms, it doesn't look like the Mormon Church did so. That's the basic foundational allegation here. Let me just give you one quick sum up here. Again, this is from that Widows Might report on our Mormon Reddit. The main point is that they have systematically understated their taxable income. The PTPs are public securities that trade like stocks but create taxable income for tax-exempt owners, such as Ensign Peak. That's the critical point here. And the Widows Might report examined Ensign Peak's PTP holdings over time via the 13F filings and applied the basic mechanisms by which PTPs create taxable income and compared those results with taxable income that was reported by Ensign Peak in the IRS 990 filings. That's the methodology here. The outcome of that comparison is both significant and robust. Ensign Peak generated substantial amounts of taxable income from these PTP investments through its 13F filing history. However, they failed to report essentially all of that taxable income prior to 2018. The practice continued to 2018-19 when the firm began to receive critical public attention in particular. So once again, we have the whistleblower here in Nielsen's resignations and a few months before Ensign Peak's 990s were officially filed. Widows Might notes that from tax year 2018 onward, the pattern of reported but taxable income matches the expected pattern. So that is the allegation here, folks. The Mormon Church systemically and systematically shortchanged the federal government its due change, did not render unto Caesar that which was Caesar's, instead underreported its taxable income to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars, shortchanging the federal government somewhere maybe around 50 million bucks. That is the allegation here from the Widows Might report. It will be very interesting to see if Congress or anyone else does anything about this. Now, my understanding is a couple of years ago, once again, Lars Nielsen reported some of these, maybe not these exact financial irregularities, but other issues with Ensign Peak to the Senate Finance Committee. Virtually nothing happened from that. Of course, we do have David Nielsen, when he whistleblowed to the SEC, he also whistleblowed to the IRS. Supposedly that probe is still open. We don't have any more information about that. Still, this is really, really big news out there. I do have one take from the Mormon blogosphere about this tax evasion here from, once again, from Rebecca.
Church guilty of tax evasion. New information from the Widows Might has come out with a very detailed report saying this is a strong possibility. They say our analysis of Ensign Peak's publicly traded partnership investments, as discussed in two distinct types of statutory reports, uncovered strong evidence of systematic underreporting of unrelated business taxable income, which appears to have continued until the firm received critical public attention. What does this all mean? It means I'm going to say it super dumbed down. They invested in something as a nonprofit, which they should have had to pay taxes on. And they're listed in the list of top 20 investors in this type of investment. Nobody can find any evidence that they ever did pay taxes. A K-1 would settle it, but nobody has access to this. So the Widows Might is raising the question. Let me know what you think.
Yeah, unless the Mormon Church in other ways pay the taxes to the IRS that we don't have access to in some other way, then they didn't follow the law once again. Every time we peel back the onion when it comes to transparency in the Mormon corporation, the onion gets stinkier and stinkier. This is an absolute thunderbolt. There's been a lot of people out there who are sending emails to the IRS to talk about how they need to look more carefully into the Mormon Church's shady financial practices, and that everyone should pay their taxes to the government, whether you like to or not. That's irrelevant. We have public services that we need to fund our government. And if the Mormon Church did not pay its fair share, they should be forced to do so with interest and with penalties. So let me know in the comments what you think about this particular article. Very, very interesting stuff. We're wrapping things up here, folks. Don't forget, we have the Mormon movie reviews, which is taking place tomorrow night, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Going to be reviewing one of my absolutely favorite movies out there, For Time or Eternity. This is a really, really interesting movie. Very, very bizarre, by the way. And it has a lot of twists and turns, and I think you'd really enjoy it. New episodes of the Mormon News Roundup are every Sunday night at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time right here on YouTube. We're also on Apple. We are on Spotify. And Mormon movie reviews are every Monday night. You can receive new content here on the Mormon News Roundup channel every single night at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Be sure to hit the thumbs up. Be sure to hit the subscriptions. I'd be very grateful for that. I'd like to thank the people who support this podcast. If you enjoy it, you can support it as well. Over there on Patreon, we have Scab, RMW, David, Blaine, Brent, and especially Sophronia. Thanks so much for supporting this podcast. And on YouTube memberships, we have Emmerich, Starla, Jeffrey, Garrick, and Lee. Thanks so much, guys, for supporting the Mormon News Roundup. And if you out there can leave me a 5-star review and hit the thumbs up, I'd be very grateful for that. Folks, we have ruminated on the great and spacious beehive. We've done it again. Thanks so much for joining us. Always think celestial, and remember that no unhallowed hand can stop the Mormon News Roundup from progressing.
Oh my gosh, you guys, the latest Mormon News Roundup is like literally the best thing ever. Totally, everyone needs to watch it. Seriously, subscribe right now.